My name is Clementina and I'm the President and CEO of the Lewis D. Brown Peace Institute. The Institute serves as a center of healing, teaching, and learning for families and communities impacted by murder, trauma, grief, and loss. Was an avid reader, he was caring, and he was compassionate. Lewis was really concerned about the violence that was going on in his community. And he truly couldn't understand why is it that adults were always blaming the young people for the problem. When things went well, every minister, every politician, every organization took the credit. When things went bad, these same entities were blaming either single black mothers or the young man. The young man need to have more respect. These youth today they really don't care. They have no regards for life. So he really couldn't understand why young people were always being blamed for the ongoing problem. Lewis was committed to peace and justice in his community. He was a member of the Teens Against Gang Violence, a group of young people that came together to really demystify the myth that young black male in urban settings, that wear baggy pants and hooded sweatshirts really did not aspire to be anything. Lewis wanted to be the nation's first black president, and the Teens Against Gang Violence was truly the platform that he found to give himself a voice. He also believed that all young people had the potential to be peacemakers, regardless of which side of the streets they come from. And if things didn't change, the way the rate of homicide and incarceration was going on, that he was concerned that by the time he got into the White House, his friends would either be dead, addicted to drugs, or in jail, and that he would have to rely on the old blood, meaning us, the adults, to help him run his administration. So for him, he really wanted to be the leader that he was called to be and to take away that myth that young people in urban settings don't have goals, dreams, or visions. For me, when Lewis was killed in 1993, 94 was my first Mother's Day without him, 95. And for me, again, we talk about the violence. We're always talking about the violence. So I took a page out of the domestic violence community that did the Jane Doe walk, a page out of the AIDS community that did the AIDS walk, the Walk for Hunger community that did the Walk for Hunger, to really create awareness of the many social issues that are going on and the importance of people impacted by those issues. So for me, there was a lot, again, about stopping the violence. I remember, I think Channel 4 used to have a Stop the Violence campaign. And again, I didn't want to focus on the problem. So really looking at the Mother's Day Walk for Peace as a way of providing a time and a space where families, especially mothers who have been impacted by murder, can take this one day, walk in unity, walk to recommit, to work together, to protect each other's children, and give ourselves permission to grieve, then give ourselves permission to then continue to celebrate Mother's Day with our living children. And also it was a fundraising for the Peace Institute. That is our major fundraiser that we do every year. So we started in Dorchester with a handful of people, of committed people. If there were 100 of us, it was a lot. But again, elected officials, religious leaders, and families impacted by murder, that we really came to walk together in Dorchester. 21 years later, this is now a staple within the community that we've moved from Dorchester, that now we're going through the entire city and ending at City Hall to make that broader statement. And it's not a black issue, it's not a gun issue, it's not a gang issue. It's, again, communities coming together, the resiliency of community, the power of families impacted by murder, and a reminder that we're not alone. And to show, even if murder is down by 1, the survivors rate has just increased by 10. A mother, a father, an aunt, an uncle, a grandmother, a cousin, classmates, co-workers, that one victim, there are multiple people that are impacted by that one homicide. So the numbers continue to increase of the survivors population, to let people know we are here and we are an asset to our city, we're an asset to our state, and we want to be partners in informing, impacting, and influencing public policy so that all families can live in peace. You know, I would switch that narrative and the question, because it's not about violence in Boston. Violence happens in every major city, across the country, and nationally. We've just seen violence erupted. I think it was the United Kingdoms, where there was a concert happening and suicide bombing. So I really want to change it from the violence in Boston to really the assets and the resiliency of the people of Boston, especially people impacted by violence. And the reason I want to do that is because, again, it's been 24 years since Lewis was killed. The young people that are committing crime and the young people that are being killed were not even born when Lewis was killed. And we're still talking about the problem. Something's missing. Something is really missing that we have not even began to think about. That we're always blaming the young people. So for me, it's really looking at Boston right now. It's like a seasonal thing. We know when violence is going to happen, or we look at April, May, June, July, and August, and maybe September. That is an influence in media and our elected officials and our black ministers that are always talking about gangs and gun violence. Yet murder happens almost every single day in every major city. October, November, December, January, February, and March. And we don't talk about those. We talk about their isolated issues. We justify why they happen. So for me, I really want to kind of shift that narrative and focus, one, on the assets of community, and two, how do we transform the way we as a society respond to homicide, respond to the violence, so that it doesn't matter who is impacted by murder, that families are treated equitably and effectively, including those whose loved ones are killed due to police shooting. Well, I think our elected officials, they can only do what they can do. Politics is politics. Really understanding the political landscape. It's politics. It's a lot of promises. It's a lot of campaign promises. It's looking for the black votes. It's looking for the black churches. So we're always looking for black people to support and come. And I think for me, I'm not even going to say the elected officials. They're doing what politicians do. Make promises. I think I'm going to bring it back to us as community. How do we hold them accountable? What is it that we can do that when an elected official comes to us and asks for our vote and makes these promises, what is the record keeping that we can go back and say, oh, you made 6 promises, you haven't kept any promise. So when they come back the next year, we are kind of checking off, well, you didn't do anything, what makes it different? So begin to hold report cards, begin to offer evaluation, and then also bring them in, engage them, and train them on the needs and how to leverage their voices on Beacon Hill, Capitol Hill, or even at City Hall. How to leverage their voices to make sure that their constituency is treated with dignity and compassion, regardless of the circumstances. Training them and educating them how to respond when a homicide happens in a way that's equitable and effective and not shaming and blaming. Many times our elected officials, again, they get on because it's a young child that was killed, or it's a white child that was killed, or it's a young girl that was killed, and we feel compassion towards that family. Yet, another homicide could happen, whether it was a 45-year-old that just came out of federal prison or a 17-year-old that has a lengthy criminal record. Then we kind of tend to choose who we want to support, and then we tend to shame the family and the community. That way no resources, or one family will get resources and the other family will not get resources. So I think for us, helping the politicians and training them, how do you respond equitably and effectively to the media when a homicide happens in your district, and also to understand and to be aware, what are the resources, the thousands of resources that the city of Boston has, that you can then make sure your constituents benefit from those resources regardless of the circumstances surrounding the homicide. So I think they're doing what politicians do. The accountability is on us. I don't get into politics. My vote is private. I will not support anyone publicly because it's not about me supporting you and me liking you, but it's about what is it that you are going to do. And then if I vote from you, I have my checklist of what it is that I'm asking you to do. And if you don't do it, then I will hold you accountable. So we have not really found a way of giving report cards to the elected officials that come for the black vote. And that's what divides us also as the black community. That we pick and choose who we want to support, and then we get upset with others if we're not supporting certain candidates. But then when that candidate, whether they win or lose, there's still no accountability. Well, someone that I guess we didn't support is in, what is it that we are going to do? Because whether the candidate that we are pushing or supporting doesn't win, somebody's in there. So it's not about who wins, it's about the collective issues within our community, so that it's being addressed in an equitable way, so that we're not always talking about gangs and gun violence and these youth need to get their act together and they have no respect for life. We know what's needed. We know what's needed, and our community has what it takes. We have the resources. We're always blaming somebody else, or we're always looking for somebody else to do something when we all have it within us. So that's, for me, politicians are politicians. I've been here, I've gone through the late Mayor Menino, I'm going through Mayor Walsh now, I've gone through God knows how many governors. We started with Governor Weld, then Dukakis, then I can't even remember the governors before. Now we have another governor. So our journey is still continuing. Our issues is still transforming society's response to homicide. So I've got to be in a place that I know what it is that I want from our elected officials. Prepare the survivors community through our Survivors of Homicide Victims Network so that they can begin to speak the same language, inform our elected officials, inform our political leaders. If you're going in, what is it that you're doing for families impacted by murder? That we don't want to, what support are you putting in place when murder does happen? And at the same time, how do we make sure that we're investing in primary prevention so that we're not always responding? So it's really, for me, it's again, what is my role? What is the role of the community? And what else can we do to, again, hold our elected officials accountable when the promises they make during election year? But we don't only want you to come and talk about gangs and guns. That's not who we are as a community. Gangs and guns are a result of poverty, institutionalized racism, unresolved grief within even the black community. We have not healed from the ongoing trauma, the cycle of violence that continues to happen in our community. And a criminal justice system that really doesn't care. That really doesn't care about its people. That continues to perpetrate and recycle and not held accountable for the ongoing re-victimization it does either to the victims or to the offenders.